So with the start of the regular season right around the corner, I haven't talked about my favorite team and the largest team on this channel, the Miami Heat, in about a month. And today I want to specifically focus on one Bam Adebayo because I think this is truly the year where he has to step in as that best player on the team role, or we just know what the max of what we thought was a lot of potential going to be because of his mentality. So let's talk about it today. I think with how well this season went overall and with Tyler's emergence and Jimmy's insane playoff run, I think certain people are forgetting just who the next one up on this team is and who's supposed to be the best player on the squad going into next year. And that is Bam Adebayo. The two-time All-Star, two-time or I think three-time All-Defensive Team player. Bam Adebayo has consistently been one of the top 3 defenders in the league. Yeah, he's never finished top 3 in Defensive Player of the Year voting, which is a travesty. But again, really good offensive player and overall one of the best defenders in the league. But a lot of people's had the same gripe with him for majority of his career since he's had the ball in his hands a lot, and that is he's just not aggressive enough on offense. So he just doesn't realize just how dominant of a player that he can be. Because in multiple situations in these playoffs, whenever Bam seemed to finally lock in and realize, hey, I need to produce a little bit more offensively, and he takes at least 15 to 20 shots in a game, you see some offensive brilliance from him. But there's times where he just sits back and he gets 6-7 shots. It happened multiple times in the Boston series, and a lot of people want to correlate that to Robert Williams. And while I do understand Robert Williams did play a significant amount of defense on Bam, that did make it a little bit harder on him. There's also the fact in that Game 7 where Robert Williams did guard Bam for a certain amount of times, and Bam went 3 of 4 on him, and overall went 15 of 22 in the entire game and dropped 25. Like, whenever he decides to be aggressive, there's very few players in this league that can truly guard Bam. The man is one of the most athletic players in the league. He's very good around the rim, has some really nice touch, has a nice mid-range jumper, and for playing the 5 position, with his athleticism, he can definitely compete for rebounds and defend these guys really well, aka how he guarded Joel Embiid and how he guarded Giannis every single time they play. But he's also very, very quick on his feet, so typical centers can't guard him, and then when you put a typical power forward on him, he's too strong and too big for those guys to handle. So a lot of the time, Bam has a good mismatch every single time he plays any single team. Again, the Celtics were a very poor matchup because Robert Williams is almost the perfect player to be guarding Bam. But also, again, Bam's shown that he can score and be effective against him too. So overall, with how this team's structured going into next year, I think this is the year Bam really has to step up and be that number 1 offensive guy, because ever since we got swept by the Milwaukee Bucks in the first round 2 years ago, this team's offensive philosophy kind of switched from Bam being the main ball handler, handling the handoffs and situations like that, to it not being in Kyle Lowry's hands, who again is the better playmaker and the point guard for this team. But Bam's assists went from about close to 6 a game to now 3, and now he's more supposed to be focused on scoring, being a lob option, always in the pick and roll, diving for offensive rebounds, things like that. And going in this year, he did that a little bit. His scoring went up, his rebounding went up. He played a way better defense, which is insane to think, but he played a lot better. I think he looked a little bit more focused on the defensive end this year, especially since coming back from his wrist injury. And then going to the NBA playoffs with just how insane Jimmy was with the production he was able to give, I think Bam felt like he could take a little bit of a backseat and he need to worry about being the main defender and then get involved in the offensive end when he needs to. But normally Jimmy or Tyler or just shooters that are on this team normally have that covered. And I don't think that's a philosophy he can live with anymore, because right now, even with the amount of shooters that we have on this team, the playoffs have shown that 39% that we shot in the regular season overall correlated to about 35 to 36% in the playoffs. You can't rely on guys or on role players to consistently hit shots again and again in the playoffs for your team to be successful. You need 2 star players, or at least a star player that steps up in majority of the moments. Jimmy did that this year, which is why we made it all the way to a Game 7 in the conference finals. Bam and Jimmy together is enough to make an NBA Finals. The two-way play from them is incredible, and right now, if Bam becomes a little bit more aggressive, not even needs to shoot threes. I know why people are trying to push him to do that. He's perfectly fine not shooting them, but taking 15 shots per game last season led Bam to average 25 points per game, 11.8 rebounds, 2.5 assists, 1.5 steals, 1 block on 58% shooting in about 19 games. He had 19 games taking above 15 shots. And before you say it, over half of those games came against playoff teams. Denver once, Brooklyn twice, Milwaukee, Toronto, Cleveland, Golden State, Dallas twice, and the Pelicans. The man, whenever he locks in on the offensive end, is almost impossible to stop. is just when he decides to lock in. There's times he just looks like a daisical out there. And when the game called for him to be a superstar, called for him to be very, very aggressive. We saw in Game 7 against Boston, even though we lost, the man dropped 25 and 12 on 15 for 22 shooting. He was out there being a damn menace and taking whatever challenge the defense threw at him and was consistently delivering. It's just the team overall came up a little bit short. Still pissed about that Max Strus 3 getting taken away. So I think going to next year, I think Tyler will be starting, so that gives another offensive option to stretch the floor, can create for himself and also create for Bam instead of it being Max Strus that's very reliant on just Bam and overall moving around the perimeter. So you bring another playmaker into the starting lineup, and now you give Bam an even better target and somebody else he can work in the pick and roll with. That's going to work into a lot of alley-oops and dump off passes. That's going to generate even more points and more looks for him to get him involved in the offense and make him realize that he needs to step up. And I think once he does step up, I expect Bam fully next year to be a 22 point per game scorer. Definitely find a way to enter all these All-NBA second team, and definitely differentiate himself as probably the third best center in the league behind Joel Embiid and Jokic. And unless Anthony Davis becomes completely healthy next year and the Lakers surprise everybody, I don't know if there's anybody else in the league that's going to win Defensive Player of the Year next year, with how Bam has constantly been getting snubbed and how pissed he is that he doesn't get the recognition he deserves on the defensive end, with being the most versatile defender and, in my opinion, a top 3 defender in the league at any point when he's on the floor. Not to mention, with the development of somebody like Omer Yurtseven, if some point in the season he's able to work his way into the starting lineup and Bam moves to his true position at the 4 spot, because I've been saying this for a while, Bam is a 4, not a 5. He plays great at the 5, and he's great there. He's given us a lot of great play at the 5 position, but his build, the way he plays, and his overall skill set works best at the 4 spot. And Omer being able to shoot the 3 a little bit and the mid-range, you still have the spacing that you need on the floor, so it's not crowded in the paint, while still having Bam play his true position. I was able to roam on the perimeter and be a defensive mastermind in that type of free safety role, and still overall get the offensive touches that he needs and can consistently play against people that he can take advantage of in mismatches all the damn time. That is exactly why I'm picking Bam in my fantasy team on Underdog Fantasy. So let's talk about him.
We'll talk about today's sponsors being Underdog Fantasy. And Underdog Fantasy is the best place to play fantasy sports as of right now, and they have their double dribble tournament going on for the 2022-2023 NBA season already. You just draft your players, and overall the grand prize is about $200,000, or it's a prize pool, and you can make out with more money than you put in by being up to 2,000th place. It's only a $25 entry fee, and if you use code FLB as of right now, you get $100 matched up to your first deposit. So if you wanted to get into fantasy sports, Underdog Fantasy is the best place to go. So hit the link in the description and use code FLB for $100 matching your first deposit. And thank you to Underdog Sports for sponsoring this video.
About the Miami Heat today, or specifically Bam, I think next year is definitely the year he jumps to that superstar role. If not, then we're going to have to really have a conversation about who we need to move to truly make this team better and make it a true championship contender, because the guys here just aren't able to get it done. Not to mention, I expect another jump from Tyler next year. Jimmy's always going to be Jimmy. Kyle is coming back healthy. Overall, even though we didn't make a lot of additions and we did lose PJ, I fully expect this team to be a top 4, top 3 team in the Eastern Conference. Again, being one of the better teams in that way, and I fully expect these guys to get better next year. So with that all being said, this is FLB. That's my time, and I'm out.